Recently, the world was treated to a brand new entry in the Indiana Jones franchise, and no, I'm not talking about the 2023 Dial of Destiny movie. I'm talking about a game about a great circle. And seeing as Indiana Jones is one of my favourite movie series, and the fact that I made a promise to myself to play more new releases this year, I thought this was a good time to finally get started. And that's why in today's video we are going to be getting the Platinum Trophy. Wait, no, that's not right. We are going to be getting all of the achievements for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, I am aware that this is also being released on PlayStation later this year, and it would have probably been more beneficial to wait till then so I can get the Platinum. But I'm going to be honest, I was dying to play through a new release that actually looked good, and from everything I've seen online, this seemed like the best choice to scratch that itch. And believe me, I was not let down by this game. It is absolutely fantastic. But I will save talking about my thoughts for the end. Until then, we've got quite a bit to go through, so without further ado, let's get into the video. We begin the game with one of the smoothest transitions from the title screen into the game that I've ever seen, and we find ourselves in a South American forest with two local guides in search of the Blood Temple. Now, for any of you who are a fan of Indiana Jones, you may recognise this place from the film Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I have to say, they've done an expert job recreating so many scenes from the actual movie, and it was nice to be brought into this brand new game with a sense of familiarity. As we make our way through the forest, we end up piecing together fragments of a map revealing the location of the Blood Temple. Just like in the movie though, we get betrayed by one of the guides. However, we give him a good whipping and send him running away. We end up finding our way into the Blood Temple, and after navigating its numerous traps, we get given our first puzzle of the game. Thankfully, I am an absolute genius when it comes to puzzles, and we managed to get through it unscathed, giving us access to the relic that we were after, the Golden Idol. We take the Golden Idol, although we couldn't call it a day just yet. Now we had a temple that wanted to trap us inside, and we had to make an escape. As we're making our way out, the final guide that was with us decides he was going to betray us and leaves us to die. But we managed to jump across the gap and escape being locked inside the temple. The guide that betrayed us, on the other hand, wasn't as lucky and gets caught in one of the temple's traps, allowing us to take the Golden Idol with us, bringing an end to the very first area of the game and unlocking our very first achievement. We then fast forward to some time later where we find ourselves getting woken up from a loud noise at the Marshall College, and so we decide to investigate. As we make our way through the college, we end up discovering a man kneeled down in front of some ancient artifacts, seemingly praying. Well, if you can even call it a man, because we soon find out that this man is actually a giant, if it isn't obvious by the way he towers over us. We try our best to fight him off, but unfortunately he's just way too strong for us to deal with and knocks us out. We end up getting woken up the next morning and working with our friend Marcus to try and find out what the giant was after. Turns out he stole a cat mummy that we picked up in Siwa a few weeks prior, although the reason as to why he took this and not anything else remains a mystery. And we also discover a pendant that was left behind by the giant during his thieving escapades. Turns out we had seen the symbol on the pendant before. It was the symbol of the Vatican secret archive, so now we wanted to find out why someone or something from the Vatican had come all the way here for a mummified cat. And so we decide to pack our bags and take a trip to the Vatican, bringing an end to the second chapter of the game and unlocking our second achievement, Break-In. Once we arrive, our goal was to find our friend Antonio, but to do that we would first need to make our way through Castel St. Angelo, which was of course crawling with guards. It's here we get our first taste of stealth as well as the game's overall combat, and I must say I found it rather enjoyable. To top it off, you also get the option of picking up numerous different items found throughout the environment to use as weapons, and using some of these managed to nab us quite a few achievements. Have some of that. Oh! Whipping disarms him. Okay, that's good to know. Very good to know. And we got an achievement. Your own medicine. What's that for? Disarmed an enemy with a whip and used his weapon to knock him out. Oh, okay. Nice, nice. And go to sleep. Oh, we got an achievement as well. Nice. Pest control. Hit an enemy with a fly swatter. Okay, cool. Okay, I wonder if we can chuck this at an enemy. That'd be good to know. Okay, we won't do it to him. He's our target. Bang. That didn't help very much, but we got an achievement. Apple of Discord. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, whether it was to knock him out or something, but yeah, nice. After making our way through the Castell, we then meet up with Antonio where we explain what's happened and why we are here. He tells us that the only giants he's ever heard of were recorded by Father Crescenzo back in the 16th century. However, this same father was also known for being absolutely mad, so whether there is any truth to his stories remains to be seen. Antonio then gets us some appropriate attire, and we are then introduced to Father Ventura, who immediately comes across as being a bit of a douchebag, as we will surely find out later. He eventually leaves and we can then begin our investigation, but first we take a quick cornetto break. No, not that cornetto, my fellow British friends, this one, and eating our first cornetto nabs us another achievement. Exploring the library, we come across a slot in the wall which just so happened to be the perfect size for our giant's pendant to fit in. Turns out that was exactly what it was for, as it ends up revealing a hidden passageway taking us down below the library, and inside we find notes detailing locations of numerous inscriptions hidden around the Vatican that may point us towards unraveling the mystery that we are trying to solve. And so with that, we tell Antonio that we are going to make our way around the Vatican to find these inscriptions, as well as get our hands on a camera to take pictures of them so that we can figure out what they point to a little bit later. Before doing that though, we decide to do a little bit of exploring where we end up unlocking a few more achievements. We pick up our first adventure book, something which we can use to learn new perks and skills, and one of the many collectibles that this game has for us to collect. Picking up our first one and purchasing our first ability from it though does unlock us the achievement literary bug? Yeah, this one. We take on our first fieldwork, which is basically this game's version of a side quest, and this has us rescuing a professor's assistant who had been caught and locked up by the black shirts currently in the Vatican, as well as retrieving a stone fragment that was taken from them. A pretty straightforward side quest, so I'm not going to go into much detail here, just know that completing the fieldwork earns us the achievement A Savage Discovery. While going through the fieldwork, I also managed to earn another achievement, and that was the achievement A Right Note for taking out an enemy with a guitar. Oh, I did not expect to take him down like that. Right in the bollocks. And we got an achievement, The Right Note. Well, it was definitely the right something. I don't know if it was the note. After completing the fieldwork, we then take a visit to the local post office, where inside we find a man named Ernesto. Now Ernesto is actually one of the vendors that can be found in the Vatican, and he gives us the option to buy books off of him that give us the locations to the different collectibles we can pick up in the Vatican. This is something we'll come back to later though, as right now the only thing we purchase and actually have enough money for is the camera. Once we get our hands on it though, we make our way around the area, finding the numerous inscriptions detailed in the notes, and we take pictures of them to show Antonio. After examining them, we come to the conclusion that they reference fallen angels and something known as the Tomb of Giants, located under the tower of Nicholas V. But to enter, we would need the blood from the 5 sacred wounds. Thankfully, Antonio has some fresh blood of Christ on him, and he gives us a bottle. Yeah, this isn't actually blood, it's wine, in case you couldn't tell. Before following this lead though, I did manage to get another fieldwork completed. Again, this is a pretty straightforward side quest and just required us to retrieve a diary of Father Crescendo after it was taken by Father Ventura and the Black Shirts. Completing it though does nab us another achievement.
Alright, book delivered, clues found.
Possa il Signore vegliare su di voi, padre.
We then head over to the Tower of Nicholas V, use the blood of Jesus to open up a secret door, and then take a step into the underworld. Now, I'm gonna be honest, throughout most of the game we find ourselves exploring different tombs and temples and underground ruins and things alike, and for the most part there's just a lot of puzzle solving until we eventually reach the end, so unless there's something that directly impacts or gives any valuable information towards the story, we are just gonna skip over it to save on time. While making my way through this area though, solving the numerous puzzles, we do have the opportunity to take some pictures using our camera, which in turn gives us notes in our journal, another form of collectible in this game, and we have to collect all of them for an achievement later. Not too sure how many there actually are to collect, but there is definitely well over a couple hundred, at least in my opinion. We do however get an achievement for collecting a total of 50 notes now though. Continuing on through the underground tomb, we solve many more puzzles and eventually come across the Giant's tomb that we open by actually breaking another puzzle and causing the structure around it to collapse, in turn destroying the tomb. It does however reveal though that there is in fact a giant skeleton inside, and along with him a note detailing that the Fountain of Confession is actually an entrance to the sacred monastery of the Nephilim Order. Not sure what that is, but I'm sure we will find out soon enough. At this point, all of the commotion that we had caused had led a bunch of soldiers down into the necropolis to investigate, and so now we had to make our way out while taking down plenty of them. Once out, we notice a nun up to a bit of mischief and so decide to follow her to find out what she was up to. We do catch up to her but end up seeing a massive blimp fly over and dock at the Vatican. Using some binoculars, we end up seeing a German archaeologist named Emmerich Voss, leader of the Nazis' occult research program, meeting up with Father Ventura. Very suspicious indeed. We also discovered that this nun wasn't actually a nun. This is Janetta Lombardi, an investigative journalist who was looking into the disappearance of her sister Laura and believes that Voss may be the one responsible. We briefly tell her what we are actually doing here, and in the end we both agree to work together. Before continuing on with the main quest though, I decided to get a few more fieldwork related achievements out of the way first. One was to photograph all of the inscriptions in the Vatican City, and the other was to help Gina. While photographing the inscriptions, I took on Gina's fieldwork at the same time that had us helping her find out what happened to her contact in the Vatican, as she was supposed to meet up with her at the museum. However, it is now off limits and her contact is nowhere to be found. After doing some investigating, although the signs were pointing towards her definitely not being alive, that wasn't the case and she was actually locked inside the Borgia Tower, and so we make our way over there, take out the soldier currently interrogating her, and save her life. Before she leaves, she does hand us a note she found revealing that the Vatican secret agency had authorized a tail on us since our archaeological dig in Siwa, the same place that we found the cat mummy, indicating that we must have stumbled across something very important to them, although what that importance actually is still remains a mystery. This does complete the fieldwork though, and does earn us another achievement, a nun in trouble. And after that mission, I finished photographing all of the inscriptions and returned the photos to Antonio for another achievement, Path of Junior. During these fieldworks, I also managed to earn 2 more achievements. One was the Offensive Defense achievement for knocking out an enemy using only counters, and the other was the Echo achievement for taking a photograph of Ernesto, the shopkeeper. Continuing on with the main quest, we end up heading over to the Fountain of Confession, where we meet with Gina and solve the puzzle, giving us access to a secret underground system beneath the Vatican. Again, like I said before, most of these locations, although very interesting to explore, just take us through solving numerous different puzzles and trials, but on our way through, I did actually unlock an achievement for taking a total of 50 photographs to get entries for my journal. We eventually reach a secret monastery, and inside its scriptorium we find more information pertaining to the Nephilim Order. We find out that the giant's name is Locus, and we also find out information regarding a treasury hidden in the Vatican. We end up finding this treasury and it is filled with a bunch of valuable and ancient artifacts. Most importantly though, we find our cat mummy.
There you are, my friend.
However, before we get to explore any more, we get a visit from Locus, and he wasn't looking to apologise for stealing our stuff. This led to a fight between me and him, which honestly just led to me running away from him for the next 5 minutes and getting the odd punch in here and there. No idea why, I just felt severely underskilled to be in here. Like, he hit me twice and I was pretty much dead. Eventually though, we get lucky enough and manage to knock him out. Before being able to escape with our cat, we get interrupted by Dr. Ventura, Mussolini and Emmerich Voss. Turns out Voss was also looking for this cat mummy as well as other artifacts very similar to it, but he seemed to know something we didn't. He smashes the cat mummy and inside it finds an ancient artifact. He then smashes other mummies in the room, revealing more of these artifacts, which they reveal are relics of something called the Great Circle. He now has a total of 13 of these relics, which he refers to as stones, with only 4 left out in the world to be found. Turns out these stones contain forces not of this world, and obviously this is why the Nazis want them. What these forces are though, we don't know, but Voss seems to believe that once he has all of them, the Nazis will become unstoppable. They then leave to get ready to travel to Giza, presumably in search of another relic, and so we decide to follow them. At this point we find ourselves climbing up one of the buildings in the Vatican up towards the Nazi blimp until we end up getting caught by Father Ventura and some soldiers. It didn't look like we would be escaping this one, but all of a sudden Locus and some other giants make an appearance and starts taking everyone out, allowing us to make an escape on the blimp with Gina, completing the Vatican chapter of the game and unlocking another achievement.
What were you doing out there?
Fresh air.
After having a little chat about something known as the Great Circle, and after getting a little shut-eye, we then arrive in Giza where we watch Voss get spit on and then catch a ride to meet up with one of Gina's contacts. We end up arriving at a little settlement, and while searching for Gina's contact, we decided that we were a bit hungry and stopped to look for some food. We ended up finding some Aish Baladi or Aish Baladi bread, and upon tucking into it, we unlocked the achievement Bread is Life. We eventually find Gina's contact, who reveals that she is Dame Nawal. While chatting with Nawal, she reveals that one of her spies managed to procure a document talking about some sort of secret experiment, with Gina's sister Laura being one of the people enrolled in it, though what this experiment is remains to be seen. She does tell us though that we may be able to find more information regarding Laura by getting into Voss's office at a nearby Nazi compound, and that to get in she will help us procure some work passes. We also come to conclude that one of the stones that Voss is looking for is hidden inside another ancient artifact called the Idol of Ra, so now we know we have to find this idol before Voss. Oh, and while here we also get a hilarious scene where we find ourselves feeding the wild snake, and I just have to show you it because I found it really funny.
One of my spies smuggled this out of the Nazi compound, funding approval for some sort of experiment. Signed by Adolf Hitler, the obnoxious little twit.
Dr. Laura Lombardi. She's on the list of the participants?
Couldn't find any description of this experiment. My German is a tad rusty.
What did you get yourself into, Laura?
She was so absorbed in her work when we lived in Berlin, she was never really present. She was like a ghost.
She still loves you, you know.
Well, I'm still here for her, doing everything I can, even though... Voss has an office in the Nazi compound. Perhaps we can find more information there.
How do we get in?
I can procure work passes. Though it may take some time, I'm afraid.
I did it. I fed the snake.
Marvelous.
Continuing on though, before being able to get any further through the main quest, we would need to wait for Dame Nawal to get the work passes. So until then, she asks us to take a look into the stone steelies that the Nazis have taken an interest in. We only need to collect 4 to progress the main quest, although there are a total of 10 to collect for another achievement. But we will worry about that a little bit later. For now, our focus is getting the 4 that we need to continue. Most of these are found in the open world in numerous different ruins, however some are tied to fieldworks, and of course fieldworks mean more achievements. The first of these we decided to work through was the Sanctuary of the Guardian fieldwork. This has us meeting up with Gina underneath the monument of the Sphinx, where we end up working our way through some very old Egyptian ruins underneath. This is the Guardian Sanctuary. Again, we end up spending most of our time here solving puzzles, where we eventually get our hands on a golden ceremonial mask and shortly after get trapped in a scorpion nest. Thankfully, we managed to find a way out of the nest, and after solving a few more puzzles, we get our hands on the Protector Steely, and once we find a way out of the Guardian Sanctuary, we unlock another achievement.
They treated these guardians like nobles. Why?
After finding enough Steely, we return to Nawal and get our hands on the work passes, where we then go over the plan of getting into the Nazi compound. We needed to head over to the workers area and then make our way through some hidden tunnels that conveniently led us straight into the compound itself. Once there, we needed to find and lower the Nazi flag that would then give Nawal her cue to cause a bit of a distraction to take most of the Nazi forces out of the area, allowing us to search Voss's office virtually in peace. Now, getting into the compound didn't go as smoothly as I'd like, although it did kind of work out in my favour, as I ended up getting the achievement A Little Tumble for pushing an enemy off of a ledge, although I am fairly positive that I never pushed him off of any kind of ledge. We eventually get into Voss's office, and while we don't find a hell of a lot relating to Gina's sister's whereabouts, we do find her notebook, so at this point we can at least confirm Voss has something to do with her disappearance. Inside the notebook, we discover that Laura had been researching some sort of ancient language with multiple references to Sumerian cuneiform, demonic script, hieroglyphics and weird looking symbols. At this point we decide to leave, but on our way out though we notice that Voss was arriving at the compound, and so now we decide to see if we can spy on him to find out what he's up to. We end up making our way into an attic where we listen in on Voss and another higher soldier named Gantz having a bit of an argument. And by bit of an argument I actually mean that Gantz is pointing his gun at Voss, threatening to kill him, which honestly wouldn't be such a bad thing. Apparently they are arguing over the fact that Gantz had killed a giant that they managed to capture with the hopes of using him to find the location of the Dream Steely. However, before anything else can be said, we end up falling through the roof on top of them.
Indiana Jones.
Voss?
What are you doing here?
We end up confronting Voss as well as investigating the dead giant's body he has with him. After a bit of back and forth, we come to realise that this weird text and symbols aren't actually any sort of cuneiform, but instead Ademic, rumoured to be the first language God gave to man. We then question Voss on the location of Gina's sister, but he tells us that Laura actually wanted to work for him and is happy where she is. Of course, this gets Gina riled up, and the distraction allows Gantz to take us by surprise, leading into a massive fight. I've got to say, I actually really loved this fight scene. It's honestly like something straight out of a movie, straight out of an Indiana Jones movie really, with each side having turns in getting the upper hand. It really is a gem to watch play out and truly reminded me of some absolutely classic movies. Of course though, we do end up winning the fight in the end, and in spectacular fashion, might I add.
Vergnügen, Herr Sturmbannführer!
I got a better idea.
At this point, we decide it's time to get out of here and end up meeting up with Nawal and escaping into some tunnels. We get split up from Gina, and while me and Nawal was looking for a way out ourselves, we do come across something very interesting. We find a wall depicting the Nephilim Order working with the ancient Egyptians in order to protect the idol of Ra. The Nephilim Order, for those of you that are still unaware, are actually the giants we have come across throughout the game, and that these giants hold the key to deciphering the dream stele located at the Great Sphinx. The key being the tattoos on their chests. So now we know we needed to head over to the Great Sphinx to hopefully get our hands on the idol, or at the very least find out where it is. Before doing that though, I decided to do a little bit more exploration and ended up finding some Nazi uniform that gave us access to an underground fight club. There are a total of 3 different fight clubs throughout the game, all consisting of 3 rounds against increasingly more difficult opponents, and beating each one nabs us another achievement. Now, a bit of advice, I strongly recommend completing the game first and getting as many upgrades as you can. This is because I went into this with almost no real upgrades to my name and got absolutely slapped the crap out of numerous times. Even though I realistically should have left it till later at this point, I did continue to keep trying until I eventually beat all 3 rounds. No achievement this time, but just wanted to give you a rough idea of what these are for later and not to go into them without any upgrades. After beating my first fight club, I also decided to make my way around Giza, collecting the remaining stele that I was missing in order to get another achievement. I could have left this for later on, but decided to get it done and out of the way now, as I had a feeling I was on the last main mission of this area and thought it would make cleanup later on a little bit shorter. Again, some stele was found in the open world, but there were still a few to be found from field works, which I decided to focus on first. The first field work had us investigating the tomb of the Queen Mother. Not much to talk about here, just know that we made our way down into the excavation site and ended up solving a mural puzzle that the Nazis hadn't managed to solve. Successfully solving the puzzle though did reward us with the light stele, and after reporting our findings to the professor that tasked us with the investigation, we unlocked the achievement, The Secret of the Queen Mother. The second fieldwork had us helping out the same professor that we had met in the Vatican, who had once again lost his assistant. Thankfully, he knew he was working at one of the excavation sites, and so we headed over to go and give him a hand in getting out. Thankfully, again, this didn't take too long, and when we returned, we actually found out that the boy had found a stele that he was willing to give to us so that we could return it to the museum in Cairo, completing another fieldwork, getting another stele, and unlocking another achievement. And at this point I collected the last couple of remaining stele and returned them to Nawal's contact to take to the museum in Cairo, unlocking yet another achievement, This Belongs in a Museum. At this point, apart from collectible related stuff, I had completed most of what this area has to offer, and so I decided to continue on with the main story. We head over to the Sphinx, where we use what we have learned about the dream stele to try and decipher its meaning, and we end up piecing together numerous symbols that point towards a location near one of the Great Pyramids, which we conclude could be where the idol of Ra is hidden. Once at the location, we find ourselves in a chamber of resonance, a weird room that seems to amplify sounds, as if to suggest that sound was the key to solving the puzzle, which, funnily enough, it actually was. We end up finding numerous broken stone tablets on the walls, as well as the pieces that were missing to make a full symbol, and these symbols were actually words from the Ademic language. Thanks to Laura Lombardi's notes, we are able to translate their meanings, and after speaking each word in Ademic in the correct order, a trapdoor opens up, sending us down into a massive underground cave system. Making our way through the caves, we of course find ourselves solving a few more puzzles until we eventually reach basically a horror section. We end up in a pitch black room, which we do manage to light up and notice that there is a statue that requires some sort of key, presumably to progress further. Before getting a chance to look around for it though, the room turns black again and we come face to face with a giant.
All hot seafood.
Who's there? Where are you?
Now this section, I can't lie, was pretty creepy. The room is pitch black, difficult to navigate, and there's a blind giant walking around making clicker noises from The Last of Us, and of course looking to kill us. I actually got a bit stuck here, and it took longer than I'd care to admit to realise I could actually light the room back up and fight the giant. Not going to bore you with the fight, just know we took the giant down and took the key from around his neck that fit in the statue. Although just before he died he did warn us not to speak the name, though doesn't actually tell us what name we shouldn't speak. For all we know at this point, it could be Bob. Continuing on though, we use the key to open up another secret passageway, and inside we find the Idol of Ra, which we decide to smash open and take the stone of the Great Circle that's hidden inside. There was no time to stick around though, as all of a sudden the room starts filling up with sand and we have to make an escape. Of course we managed to escape the chamber, unlocking the achievement Idol of Ra. Well, we sort of escaped. While we did make it back outside, we were also trapped underneath an absolute boatload of sand. To top it off, Voss then makes an appearance and is able to take the stone from us. At this point, rather than just kill us, he decides to leave us alone to dehydrate and die in the desert, although we do find out before he leaves that they plan on heading to the Himalayas next in search of their missing crew, and presumably in search of another stone. At this point, it wasn't looking too good for us. It was boiling hot, we had an army of scorpions looking to take a few pokes at our head, and it looked like we wasn't going to make it. That was until Gina and Nawal showed up and managed to save us. After being saved, Nawal tells us that one of her men managed to get their hands on some more intel regarding Voss and how he actually come across the Great Circle to begin with. They had found one of the ancient stones in Machu Picchu, and that Gina's sister Laura was taken there because he needed her help in translating the Adamic writing on the stone. However, something happened causing the stone to go missing. Gina then tells us that she had intercepted some Nazi transmissions with Morse code coming from the Himalayas and was able to write down the exact coordinates, confirming that Voss was heading there next and that the stone was most likely there. Fast forward to a few days later, we find ourselves in the freezing cold climbing up one of these snowy Himalayan mountains. Eventually, during our climb, we come across a Nazi battleship, and in case you don't know, for the battleship to be on top of a mountain is virtually impossible. It should actually just be in the ocean, so of course we go and check it out. Once inside, it was obvious the ship had been here for quite some time and there was no sign of life. We continue to explore further and find Gina's sister Laura. However, it was not the happy reunion Gina wanted. Laura had unfortunately passed away due to the cold, and now she wanted to find out what she was doing here. We also find out that Laura had seemingly been working here of her own volition and had managed to find some more clues regarding the ancient stones, with notes mentioning something about speaking the word to fold the earth. Not sure quite what it means just yet, but I'm sure we will find out shortly. Unfortunately, we couldn't give Laura a proper burial as the Nazis had arrived and had broken into the battleship, and so now we needed to fight our way through the ship and get our hands on the stone before they did. We end up reaching the conning tower and find a very frozen Nazi that had a special gift for us. Yes, it was the stone. Before we could get our hands on it though, a soldier breaks his way in and takes the stone for himself. Of course, we couldn't let that happen and we end up getting into a bit of a fight. Thankfully though, Gina manages to get the stone and hides, which was just in time too, as Voss's man Gantz appears and takes us prisoner. We then have a bit of a debate about having absolute devotion and loyalty to one's country, and that being American, it's something that our narrow minds will never understand. Just as we're about to be killed though, Gina makes another appearance brandishing the stone, and Gantz orders her to bring it to him. She does bring him something, but it wasn't the stone, it was instead a grenade. At this point the ship was sliding down the mountain pretty fast, and so we decide to get as far back up the ship as possible to try and increase our chances of surviving, which somehow we actually managed to do.
We have to say the word in a dash! Hatsalaim!
Yep, turns out the stone had some incredible power and was able to stop us from certain death, and actually transported us all the way to Shanghai. Gantz also managed to survive, but it wasn't for much longer, as in his attempt at killing us again, a massive shard of glass instead kills him. Now this is a relatively short section and there's not really much to talk about here. Shanghai is currently under attack from the Japanese, and our goal was to simply find a way to escape, which we managed to do by finding a plane and fighting off Japanese planes until we escaped the city. This ends with us making a jump from one plane to another, which was honestly like something straight out of a film, earning us another achievement.
Out of my way, pal! Tina! Cannon!
I'm trying!
And while going through the level itself, I did manage to earn another achievement, and that was the achievement Bookworm for learning 10 abilities from adventure books. From here though, we decide our next location to head to would be Sukhothai deep in the Siam jungle, as that is another ancient site located within the Great Circle. We end up stopping off at a village, but because it's quite late, we decide to book a room at a local hotel. While Gina tries to get us booked in, we decide to have a phone call with our old friend Marcus back at the Marshall College. Unfortunately, it wasn't all good news though, and he tells us that we have lost our job at the college. During our conversation, we also get a visit from Locus, the giant from the Vatican, although this time he wasn't looking for a fight and instead just lightly threatened us to back off before disappearing out into the night. We then head to our rooms and give our condolences to Gina on the loss of her sister. We chat a bit more and then even go to reach in for a cheeky little smooch, but are unfortunately interrupted by an explosion. At this point we then work with some of the rebels in the area fighting off the enemy soldiers and thankfully manage to make an escape. We end up talking to one of the rebels called Palin, where we tell her that even though we are an archaeologist like Voss, we want to stop him. She ends up taking us to her village, where we meet with her uncle, who is also the leader of the village, and we assure him that we aren't here to steal any relics, but that we want to stop Voss from getting his hands on them and using the powers from these relics as a weapon of war. Thankfully he agrees to work with us and even points us towards a relic known as the Blessed Pearl with a word carved into it that no one can read, and we conclude that this very same relic is likely one of the stones from the Great Circle. Before going on with the main quest though, I first needed some cash to get my hands on a rebreather, and so I decided to take this opportunity to once again complete a few fieldworks in this area of the game. The first fieldwork had us looking for Uncle Sunan's lost nephew. The last he had heard was that he was going out to study some ruins, but has not been heard from since, and so our job was to find him and bring him home. We begin by heading to his nephew's treehouse, where we find a hidden journal entry detailing some kind of secret temple buried beneath an area known as WatsonKHD, and so we head there on the hopes that this is where he is. Once we get there, while searching for the entrance to these secret tunnels, we do end up finding some star fruit, and much like with some of the other foods we found previously in the game, we get another achievement for eating one, Celestial Delight. Once inside, we end up finding Sunan's nephew Aaron, but he was adamant he wasn't leaving until we had helped him discover what was hidden inside, and so of course we had no choice but to help him investigate, which for the most part just consisted of us solving numerous puzzles involving water. And in the end it turns out that the temple was actually housing a massive statue of Shiva. Even though there wasn't much else to do here, Aaron insisted on staying behind to study it further, and so we made our way back to the village to tell Sunan that Aaron is safe, completing the fieldwork and earning another achievement.
ฉันมีนิทานเรื่องที่จะเล่าให้ฟังอีเดียนาโจนส์เชิญ
The next fieldwork we took on had us once again helping out Sunan, who wanted us to head to a cave and retrieve the golden hook. In terms of what we had to do during this fieldwork, there wasn't a hell of a lot. Just know that there was a prayer wheel located inside that when touching it caused us to pass out and took us back to the Marshall College, though this time it looked significantly different from when we last saw it. There were a couple of puzzles we needed to complete while we were here, but the majority of the mission just had us experiencing memories of numerous points throughout the game. Must say, it did take me by surprise, and I didn't expect this type type of mission in an Indiana Jones game, but it fits surprisingly well and I really did enjoy it. Once we were out though, we were able to solve the prayer wheel puzzle, which gave us access to the golden hook, and returning it to Sunan finished the fieldwork and nabbed us another achievement.
ก็มีความเป็นจริงเหมือนกันแล้วคุณมีประวัติศาสตร์ไหมอินเดียนาโจนส์
Only my own.
With 2 more fieldworks out of the way though, and a little bit more money in my pocket, I was able to purchase the rebreather, allowing us to stay underwater for an extended period of time, which was needed for the main quest. We find ourselves heading to the northwestern part of Sukhothai, where we end up using the rebreather to make our way into a massive gate-like structure, which of course had another puzzle we needed to solve in order to bring our boat through to the other side. What we saw on the other side though was a massive stone-like pyramid we needed to find a way into, as well as an absolutely giant snake we needed to avoid. And being Indiana Jones, this is easier said than done. We end up finding an underwater passageway that we can use to gain access into the pyramid, along the way avoiding some close encounters with the snake. Once inside, unlike the puzzle solving we usually need to do, we instead just spend a lot of time jumping across gaps. Eventually, this led us to having a massive standoff against the snake, but thankfully we managed to avoid getting eaten by throwing a bunch of tridents into its mouth, causing it to run away. Continuing to make our way up to the top of the pyramid, we eventually managed to get Gina up there with us and then gain entrance to a puzzle room, because of course there's always got to be some sort of puzzle. This one wasn't too difficult though, and just required us to use multiple game pieces found in the room to get all of the rotating objects facing the right way. This then reveals some sort of ancient map that shows the location of the stone that we were looking for. However, before being able to study it further, we get another visit from Locus. Yep, we now had another fight with the giant. This one didn't last that long though, as the massive snake arrives again, but we managed to work together to bring it down. And then Gina gives a speech in an attempt to unite us all together.
I will help you. And I will just keep beating you up.
Hey! You two! You're acting like 2 little schoolboys, do you know that? Boss is expecting you to fight. And while you're too busy fighting, he's gonna steal the stones from under our noses.
I must protect the words. I must atone for my ancestors.
Oh, for God's sake! Who cares? You are both stuck in the past. And right now there is a great evil spreading throughout the world. And we can choose to fight against it or each other.
I have no choice.
Great distraction.
I meant what I said. Let's get out of here. This place giving me the heebie-jeebies.
We then make our way out of the stone pyramid and decide to head back to speak to Sunan. We show him the map that we have found and he tells us that the stone must be somewhere at the temple of Wat Matat. Before doing that though, I decided to complete the last fieldwork in Sukhothai that had us investigating an excavation site that the Nazis are planning on using explosives to blast into. Once at the expedition site, we make our way into the underground ruins where we find a few dead soldiers as well as an old student of ours named Annika. Turns out though that Emmerich Voss had actually invited her along into his expedition on finding the Great Stones and presumably chose her as she was once our student and was likely the closest he would get into working with someone like us. Again, we find ourselves making our way through this structure, solving numerous puzzles and avoiding death until eventually we find the treasure hidden within, the Idol of Yaksha, rumoured to be a cursed item that warriors many years ago buried here along with what they believe was a demon. As we were making our way out of the ruins though, Annika betrays us and tries to escape with the idol, although she didn't get very far, and not only did she lose the idol on her way out, but she also lost an arm. Of course, we take the idol and return it to Palin, completing our final fieldwork and unlocking another achievement. At this point we continue on with the main quest, where we then head over to Wat Matat and find a secret passageway leading us underneath the temple. Inside we find some more puzzles to solve, with the most notable being the game that we had played back at the stone pyramid. The difference this time being that the game is actually a lot bigger and the pieces that we needed to place were actual people rather than little kind of mini objects. Thankfully, we had the help of Sunan and his village and were able to solve the puzzle, leading us deeper into the underground temple. Eventually, we find the Blessed Pearl, we break the statue, get our hands on the stone, and then make an escape from a now crumbling ancient ruin. Once outside though, we run into Locus, who has taken Gina hostage, and so we agree to hand him the stone in exchange for Gina's freedom. Turns out though, we were about to have bigger issues than the giant. Voss turns up with the Nazis and begins laying down fire at us. At this point, with very little options, we decide to work together with Locus to make an escape. This leads us to escaping from the soldiers on a boat and taking down as many as we can. Although this doesn't go according to plan, and we end up having to bail from the boat, causing Gina to get captured by Voss and his men. This completes the area of Sukhothai though, and we unlock the achievement, the Blessed Pearl. We find Locus again and we tell him of what's happened to Gina and that we need to get her back, even offering up the stones for his help. However, this time he doesn't take the stones and instead just agrees to help us get her. This then leads us to once again travelling halfway around the world until we eventually reach the Ziggurat of Ur, located in Iraq, the final site of the Great Circle. We find out that the Nazis have already begun excavating the site, but thankfully have brought Gina along with them. Due to the incredible amount of guards though, there was going to be no easy way of getting in. This is when Locus decides to whistle out some sort of tune and tells us that his people are coming and that we should get Gina and get out of there while we can. So while Locus and his people are causing a distraction, we sneak into the camp and rescue Gina. We tell her that we need to leave, but she's adamant that we find out what Voss is up to and help out Locus. And of course, Indy loves a good mystery, and so we agree.
You're damn right I do.
We find a way up and into the ziggurat, and once inside we eventually come across something we definitely did not expect to see. It was Noah's Ark, once believed to have been stranded but was now clearly placed here a long time ago, although the link between the Ark and the stones still remains a mystery. We tell Gina to stay put and look after the stones while we make our way into Voss's tent to find out more information. We make our way into Voss's tent where we find and confront him on his plans, and we have a discussion about where the stones come from and what they were actually used for. And he also reveals what happened to Laura. While she was working for Voss, she was tasked with finding out what the stone did. However, the experiment had failed and caused the Nazi battleship to end up in the Himalayas. She refused to do the experiment again, saying that she would rather die than give him the stone. Gina then makes an entrance and tries to shoot Voss, but unfortunately the gun wasn't loaded and we are taken prisoner by Voss's men. Voss and his men then drag the Ark out onto a lake and takes the three of us with them to witness what he's about to do. Voss believes that by placing all of the stones into the Ark and speaking the words in the correct order, it will give him the power to travel to any location in an instant, which he believes will make the Germans absolutely unstoppable in the war. One by one, Voss places each of the stones and speaks out their corresponding words. However, after placing the final one, nothing actually seems to happen, leading him to blaming us for ruining the whole thing. Although just a few seconds later, an absolutely massive storm rolls in and we end up breaking free, which meant it was finally time to go hand to hand with this absolute flannel. The fight itself is pretty standard, so there's not much to talk about in that sense, but it does lead to both us and Voss getting flung off of the edge of the Ark. Thankfully though, Gina manages to save us and we get our final story related achievement. We then see Locus take control of the Ark in an attempt to stop what is happening, and of course Voss has to make another appearance, although this time it would be his last, as all of a sudden a massive beam of light shoots out from the stone circle, absolutely draining Voss of his life force in the process. At this point, Locus tells the both of us to jump from the ship, and we then see him steer the Ark into a massive portal that has opened up in the ocean. Whether he survives this or not remains a mystery, but thanks to his sacrifice, he did save the world from what I assume to be an end of day scenario. Me and Gina survive our little bath in the ocean, and we have one more little chat with her before we say our goodbyes.
I guess this is goodbye.
Yeah. This is yours.
Laura's journal. Thank you.
Hey, you wanna stick around for a little while? I got some friends. They could show us the sights.
There's a war coming. And I have a hell of a story to tell. And I think you will be too busy chasing the past.
I don't know. Think I could make room for other things?
Well, not me. Not now. Too much is at stake. Adios, Rambo.
Jones! Timing when all of this is over. Maybe we can have that fancy dinner!
I'd like that.
Oh, I absolutely love that theme tune, man. But this does bring us to the end of the story of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now, I'm going to be honest, I haven't played a hell of a lot of new releases recently, but I am so damn glad that I chose to play this one. I had such a great time going through the story, enjoying all of its little details and its gameplay, and Machine Games have done an absolutely smashing job with it. Honestly, it is one of the best newly released single-player story-driven games that I've played for quite some time. Although, again, I haven't played a lot of newly released games. But with that being the end of the story, this now means it was finally time to move on to the cleanup stage, with our first achievement actually coming instantly after the credits, and that was the filling in the blanks achievement for revisiting a previous location. Now that we had finished the story, I decided to revisit each of the previous locations in the game and work my way through collecting all of the collectibles. Some of these we had spoke about briefly during the story, like journal entries, photographs, adventure books, but there are some like mysteries, lost artifacts, and ancient relics which I hadn't mentioned at all. And I'm not going to go into any extreme amounts of detail either, because they are literally just collectibles. We all know what collectibles are. Just know that this did take up quite a good chunk of my time on the game, although as I mentioned earlier, this was made easier as we didn't have to actually find all of these collectibles ourselves or rely on a guide, as the shopkeepers in each of the major locations sold maps that revealed each of the collectible locations. And I've been having the achievements pop in the background as I've been speaking, as to not waste any time, because again, these are just collectibles. Everyone knows what collectibles are. There's only so much you can actually say about them. And with all of the collectibles and their respective achievements out of the way, we could finally turn our focus onto getting the final achievement of the game, and this was the achievement, A Slippery Customer. One that I'm very surprised I hadn't got while going through the story, as all you actually have to do is dodge a power punch, and believe me, I did a lot of dodging, but apparently I didn't dodge the correct attacks, I guess. It did take me a few tries to unlock, but eventually we managed to find an enemy and bait him into using a power punch, and in doing so, we unlocked the achievement. Ow. Right, I need to get rid of this other guy, otherwise I could die here. Bang. Ooh, knocked out, nice. And that was a power punch and I missed it. Great. Come on. Come on, buddy, do a power punch. Two fist me. Two-hander. Come on. There we go. There we go. Woo. Did we do it? Yes, there we go. Slippery Customer. Have some of that, sunshine. Final achievement of the game. Wow. That was fun. And with that being our final achievement of the game, we have now successfully 100% completed the entirety of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I could have waited for it to come out on PS5 later this year and made a video on it then, but I was so desperate to play through this game now, I just couldn't wait. And I haven't actually seen any other kind of Indiana Jones Great Circle 100% achievement videos or anything out there, so I thought it'd give people a chance to see how a trophy and achievement hunter would go for these achievements. But anyway, with that, here are my thoughts on the experience as a whole. First off, the game is absolutely stunning. It truly is absolutely gorgeous and breathtaking to look at. The environments, the details in the ancient ruins, the cutscenes, the actual just everything. It all stood out and was very pleasing to look at. The characters looked fantastic, some of the best I've seen to be honest, but of course Indiana Jones himself is the main standout. They have absolutely nailed the look of Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones, and Troy Baker, the same voice actor who played Joel from The Last of Us, as well as a bunch of other characters from other games, honestly did a superb job of actually sounding like Indy. Honestly, you could have told me Harrison Ford voiced the man himself, and if I didn't know who was actually behind it, I would have probably believed you. The story is actually really good and such a pleasure to go through, and I honestly feel like this could have been a film from back in the late 80s, early 90s when Indiana Jones first came around. Not to be confused with the phrase though, it feels like you're playing a film. That's not the case at all. It very much feels like you're playing a game, but the story itself, the whole plot line, the characters and the journeys they take throughout could have easily been in a film back in the day. In terms of gameplay and controls, I'm going to be honest, while I did enjoy it, it was pretty simple in some aspects, which isn't actually a bad thing, as it allows most players to just pick it up and get going without having to learn all these different button combinations to do certain things, which I always appreciate. My only real issue with this game is that for me, I felt like there was a lot of go here, solve this puzzle, go there, solve that puzzle. While I did find the puzzles interesting and well thought out, I do feel like there was just a bit too much of them. Maybe in the next one, if they make another one, have a few less puzzles, add some more combat-y scenes, some more action scenes, just something other than just, I don't know, it felt like constant puzzles, and like I said, I enjoyed them, but there was just a lot of them. And one last thing that was a little bit of a gripe for me, and believe me, this is actually really little, something that's probably not even worth mentioning, but it's the fact that when climbing with the lasso or swinging, or even when climbing a ladder, you are forced into third person. Personally, for me, I would have loved the option to toggle that off. I appreciate that it was likely a choice that was made to help, as I can imagine in some scenarios being stuck in first person would be a bit of a hindrance, but I personally would have preferred it, just so it gives you the kind of feel that you are actually going through this game and experiencing everything through Indy's eyes, obviously excluding the cutscenes. With that though, this does bring us to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, then a like and share would be very much appreciated on the channel. It really shows your support and helps push the video through the algorithm, allowing more people to see it. And as I always say, your support is always appreciated on the channel. Let me know your thoughts of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle down in the comments below. Have you played it? And if you have, how did you find it? Are you planning on playing through it? Please be sure to let me know, as well as any other suggestions you may have for future videos. And if you've got this far and you haven't already, then why not? Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on. Stay up to date with everything I upload. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.